All right, everybody, we're going to start a little bit early because I'm ready to go. So, originally wanted to start this at 5 o'clock, which was an hour ago, but schedule did not permit me to be ready that soon. So here we are. And as I said, Michael would appreciate this first one because he actually lived in Munich for a while, and he was our German translator while we were there when we needed it, which wasn't very often, but still came in really handy at times. And he's a big Bayern Munich fan, so this was our visit to their stadium, Allianz Arena, which unfortunately, because of some scheduling issues, we did not get to do the guided tour that we had all booked. Ended up having to kind of do a self-tour, which means we didn't get to see a lot of the things. But yeah, so here's what we're going to do. It's been a while since we've done a stream, right? If you're not real familiar with my life, the fall is the crazy time for me. My son plays high school soccer, which means most days he's either got practice or a game. I also do a lot of travel for Rachel's Challenge in the fall. Plus, of course, we had the tour. So just not a lot of time in there to do streams. But things are going to start slowing down here as we get into November. So Middlefield, Ralph, just right up the road from me. Not far at all. We did not visit Leipzig, Sean. This tour was Munich, Salzburg, and Vienna. And you'll see a couple of folks in the chat who it's very late for. So I apologize for that. For our European friends. But Joe was on the tour, Michael was on the tour, and Vaslav, I think I saw him a little while ago in the chat. He was there as well. So, yeah, we're going to do a Q&A, while also I'll just be showing you some of the highlights of the trip. I might show a couple video clips, but mostly just kind of go through some of the pictures that I took. But I have visited the Netherlands, Simon. It was actually my second ever trip to Europe was to the Netherlands. So we'll kind of go through this, but I'll also do some Q&A time as we go along. See a little bit of our look at the stadium and the arena at Bayern Munich. There were a bunch of sheep on the hill right next to the arena there. Yes, I did get pulled over in Germany for having Netherlands plates. How different is Central Europe to the U.S.? Not as different as you would think. I mean, cities are cities, right? So there's a lot of similarities and stuff. But I will say, obviously going to a city, you can't necessarily get a full comprehension of what that country is like, because it's like going to New York City and thinking, well, that's what Ohio's like or North Carolina's like. It's not. Everything's different. But there were definitely some similarities I could see to certain parts of the United States. The Alps look very similar to me to places like the Rockies in Colorado, for example. Besides the Civil War, what other topics would I consider myself an expert in? Family history, to a lesser degree, the Western Front of World War I, and maybe British medieval history, the Wars of the Roses, things like that. Did most Germans or Austrians speak English? Yeah, and that's been the case in pretty much every country I've been in Europe. I've been in on the mainland. Non-English speaking countries, I've been to France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Austria, and Germany now. And with very few exceptions, everybody I've encountered spoke English. Do I have plans on coming to Scotland? I was there last year. Definitely want to go back. My kids are dying to get back to Scotland. They absolutely loved Scotland when we were there. So yeah, I definitely want to get back to Scotland when I get a chance. So this was our first day in Munich. A few of us were walking around, and we went to the site of, if you're not familiar with, there was something called the White Rose Movement, which was a student anti-government organization. They were they were peaceful protesters against the Nazi regime that were centered around Munich. And they would pass out flyers and things like that. But three of them that you see here, Hans and Sophie Scholl and Christoph Probst, were guillotined by the Nazis for their work in speaking out against the government. So I did a little bit of video there, so that'll be among the things that you'll see in the video. The video is going to be a little different. It's not going to be necessarily focused on a particular topic in each video, but more kind of the progression of the tour that we did. So you'll see things throughout the tour videos. Czechia, definitely in the plans. I would love to get to Prague, and there's a possibility that could happen sooner rather than later. There's a possibility of a tour that involves, let's see, Budapest, Bratislava, and Prague. Working on that. Don't know a lot about Eastern European history, so those are images from that. There's Michael there, who's in the chat. We were visiting these apartments that at one time were military housing for U.S. military families, and that was where he lived for a time. So we went past Stirling. I saw Stirling Castle, but did not get to visit it. So, and then right there you see Václav, if he's still in the chat. He was there earlier. That's him right there. And that's Ben and Kareem and Anna, who were all part of our tour. This was kind of before the tour started. This is my first time having beer. I'm not a beer drinker, but my first time having beer in Germany. So, which country had the best army in World War I? Overall, probably Germany, but dang, did Canada have some great fighters too. So this was my steak and potato I had the first night. This is us on the train going to Dachau. So Dachau was a pretty powerful experience. It was my very first time visiting a concentration camp. So it was not an extermination camp. There are different kinds of camps, right? This was a camp. This was the very first permanent concentration camp set up by Germany after the Nazis took power, like within weeks of them taking power. And this was for a lot of political prisoners. There were about 40,000 people who died at Dachau, but very few were outright exterminated. There were executions. There is a gas chamber there, but it was only used a handful of times. JD's there. Steak and potatoes. Must not have had any chicken strips on the menu. I prefer steak and potatoes to chicken strips. Just not always that easy to get. Dachau was not the camp depicted on Band of Brothers. That was... I think it might have been a satellite camp of Dachau, but it was not Dachau. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Berklow or something like that was the name of the town nearby. I'm sure JD knows what it is, or somebody will. Hello, everyone. How did I feel when visiting Dachau? Landsberg, that's it. Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate that. So, first time walking through those gates, and you see that sign that says "Work makes you free," right? It took a little bit of time to take it in, and then especially going into where the crematorium was, and the same building that had the crematorium also had the gas chamber. That was an intense experience, and that was one that I was there with several people from our tour, but I kind of walked off on my own for a little while, and took my hat off. I just felt out of respect. It was about what I expected it to be. I didn't feel like an overwhelming oppressive sadness like I've felt in some places, and maybe that's in part because it was a work camp and not a death camp, even though a lot of people did die there. But yeah, it was still a pretty intense experience. And somebody asked if I wanted to go to Poland. Yes. Kaufering 4. Yeah, Landsberg, I think, is the name of the town that's nearby there. But yeah, I do want to go to Poland when things calm down in that part of the world a little bit. Auschwitz is definitely a place I'd like to visit at some point. All right, so let's take a look. I have some pictures. There's a memorial to the in honor of the 42nd Rainbow Division, which were among those who liberated the camp. And this right here, what you see are these are the outlines of the barracks. They've reconstructed one of the barracks so you can see it. Actually, a couple of them, I think. But these show you where all of them were, and it was a massive complex. That was one thing that struck me, was it was much bigger than I expected it to be. It was a pretty substantial complex. And of course, right next to Dachau to the prison camp was a SS training camp. So part of that's been turned into the recreation area for the SS has been turned into a convent, which I love. And there was a chapel. Had a chance to go in there and kneel and pray just for a little while and just spend a little bit of quiet time there. Salzburg was on this trip. So we went to Salzburg. We went to the Eagle's Nest. Went to the remains of Hitler's Berghof. So here's the sign for the crematorium. And this is the building here where the crematorium was. This room off to the side of the crematorium is one of the places where they stacked the bodies that were waiting to be cremated. So that was pretty intense. That whole building was pretty intense. Mauthausen's a place I'd like to go to because my great uncle was in the 11th Armored Division, and he was one of the people who liberated Mauthausen. And I heard a lot of stories growing up of what he saw and experienced there. This was pretty. It would have been pretty tough to escape from. And we saw some of that, like the trench and canal system and the kind of the several lines of fortifications and kind of the deadline that if you passed, you would be executed. Somebody mentioned something about Bergen-Belsen, which of course is where Anne Frank died and her sister died. And I actually was just working on my daughter's boyfriend's family tree. He's Jewish and had a lot of family that lived through or lost family members in the Holocaust. And his great-grandmother, I found out, was actually an inmate at Bergen-Belsen at the same time that Anne Frank was there. And he didn't know that. He knew his great-grandmother had been in a concentration camp, but he didn't know the details. And I found all the records of her being in Bergen-Belsen. She was originally sent to, she was in the Warsaw Ghetto, or no, the Łódź, Lodz. Somebody who speaks Polish can tell me, but I think that's Łódź or something like that. She was in the ghetto there. When that was liquidated, she was sent to Auschwitz and then sent to another camp. I can't remember which one. And then finally to Bergen-Belsen. And that's where she was liberated. Eagle's Nest was amazing. The view was just ridiculous. And thankfully, it was a little cold and it was snowing when we were up there. Whoats, okay, I thought so. So here you have, and they actually ask you not to take pictures, but kind of everybody was. And so I didn't do any video. I don't think I did any video of the crematorium. Did see the palace in Vienna. We'll get to that. Here is, this is the gas chamber. There, it's a small one. And to my understanding, it was used on some Soviet prisoners once, but otherwise was not used in any significant way during the war. And this is where you kind of see these were the rooms where they would like fumigate. And again, this is the old crematorium that they had before they built the bigger one next door. This is the place where some of the ashes were scattered. So it's really a grave of tens of thousands of people. That was pretty intense. This wall here is where prisoners would oftentimes be put up against the wall and shot when they did things that way. Grave of many thousand, it says there. Many thousands unknown. And this area was kind of turned into a garden that you could walk through, and it was a very quiet place, very solemn. And then, of course, there are different... this is the wall here, and then on the other side of the wall is kind of where the SS training camp was, and where the what's the word I'm looking for? The word for the place that nuns go. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. Not a monastery, that's for monks. But somebody will say it in the chat, because sometimes I draw a blank when I'm in the middle of chatting. But there are also convent. Thank you, Ralph. Ralph's on top of this stuff. I appreciate it. I said it earlier and then I forgot. But there are different, and this is the entrance here to the Carmel Nuns Convent. There are different like chapels, so to speak. Like there's an evangelical chapel, there's a Catholic chapel, there's one for Jewish people. There's a Russian Orthodox chapel, all on the site. And here you can see I'm standing at one end of one row of the of where the barracks were, and you can see one of the 7 guard towers that surrounded the camp there. Dawson, thank you for that. You did go to that camp. Yeah, there's a few places I've been that you could feel death like that. Verdun, certainly one of those places for me where I'm going to be next week. But yeah, it was a massive camp, and these are some reconstructed bunks that give you a sense. There were a lot of school groups there, which I was really glad to see. It was actually very crowded. There had to have been at least 1,000 people there when we were there, and a lot of them were school groups that were touring. And so I was glad to see that they're doing a great job of making sure they educate these young people on this stuff. And there, of course, is the sign, much like what you see at a place like Auschwitz. Basically, work makes you free, which is kind of sickening in a way that they have that. Hey, Evan, did not go to Bannockburn. Went past the Bannockburn battlefield, but did not go there. Am I still on vacation? No, I got back a week ago from Austria. And here's the train line coming in from that. I'd take a picture of Pepsi because Pepsi's kind of hard to find in Europe. It's usually Coke. So I was pretty happy to see some Pepsi. I sent that to my daughter. Another thing that I loved when we were at Dachau was that they were selling yarmulkes that you could get. I loved the fact that there were all of these, like, there were things on the Hebrew alphabet, and there was all this stuff on Judaism that was available. And I just found myself finding a little bit of satisfaction in knowing that that stuff was there, and how horrified those SS guards would have been to know that. And not a lot of people know this, and I'll talk about it in my video from Dachau. But when Dachau was liberated by the Americans summarily executed nearly 100 SS guards when they first took the prison. They just rounded them up and started shooting them. So that definitely was something that happened. Catching up on the chat here. Am I ready for the snow on Tuesday? Yeah. I'm going to get out of here just in time. What is the saddest place I've ever been to? I think it would probably have to be Verdun. That's the most oppressive sadness I've ever felt. Specifically, places like Fleury, which is one of the villages that they say died for France, mort pour la France. Pretty awful. Wooge, okay. Wooge, okay. Snapshot in history, appreciate that. I knew that it was different than it spelled. So this is us just chilling on the train on the way back. Have I ever thought about going to a Japanese internment camp stateside, Cameron? Thank you for that. And yes, if I get the chance to do that, I will. How accessible is Bavaria from Austria? Very accessible. We took the train from Munich to Salzburg to Vienna. So it was all public transportation for us. Took the train and trams and streetcars while we were in all those places. Would I go to Frankfurt? Yes, I'd love to go to Frankfurt at some point. Have not been to Corsica. Aiden, this was an actual tour. There were 20 people that were on tour with me, and you're going to get to know all of them in the video series. And there he is, folks. That's the history guy. Many of you, if you've been around the channel for very long, you know my long history with him. Well, we finally got a chance to meet. He was very friendly, very cordial the time that we met. His tour, he was doing the exact same tour as us, starting a day later. So his group was in the same hotel as us, and they were just like a day behind. Everything we did, they did the next day. What did I think of Austrians and Germans? Awkward, Rob says. It's easy to go between one and the other because, as somebody said, they're Schengen, Snapshot in History said. So all of the Schengen kind of West and Central European countries, crossing the border is like going from Ohio to Pennsylvania. It's like nothing. You're just going to another area, especially if you're going by train and stuff like that. Now, there are certain things, like if you drive into Austria from another country, there's a sticker I think you need to have, but I wasn't doing any of that. So, Václav, sorry we're doing this so late. I know it's late for you guys. It's midnight in Central Europe. But Tanner, thank you. Yes, I definitely want to do some Texas independence history. My very first video ever on this channel was at the Alamo, which there isn't much to see. And it was kind of an old video with not a lot of great quality, but I definitely want to do some more. So whoever took the picture took 4 of them, so you see the history guy in different kind of motions there. All right, so then we just walked around Munich a little bit, and oh my gosh, the churches in Munich, Salzburg, and Vienna were just incredible and so beautiful. So this was kind of cool because before he became the Pope, Benedict XVI was the Archbishop of Munich. And so this cathedral was like his seat, his home church, his home parish, so to speak. Trenton, thank you for that. So this is a view from up at the top of the cathedral, looking out over Munich. Amazing city. Absolutely loved all 3 cities that we were in. Did we see many castles? Yes, you're going to see. Yeah, I've heard that Arnold Schwarzenegger's Austrian accent is kind of like what Austria's version of a hillbilly accent would be, to the point where they wouldn't let him dub his own German. When he does an acting job, they hire somebody else to dub the German versions, because they said that his accent doesn't work well for that, because he's kind of a hillbilly accent. It would be like hearing the Terminator speak with a Kentucky drawl or something. Kevin, what's going on, man? Yeah, I got to upload all these photos to our group, our drive, so you guys can see those yourself. No, we didn't get a chance to watch any football while we were there. It was the international break, and so Bayern Munich wasn't playing. We also went by the RB Salzburg Stadium when we were leaving Salzburg and going to Vienna, so got to see that as well. So this is the Devil's Footprint. I'll talk more about that when I do the video there. Here's the Glockenspiel in Vienna. As a Kentuckian, snapshot in history, what part of Kentucky are you in? I may have asked you this before, but yeah, we did miss Oktoberfest. That was intentional. I didn't want to be there during Oktoberfest. I wanted to be there afterward when there'd be a little bit less people, and it was still pretty crowded. Trenton, yes, if you're there, if I do end up going to Bratislava, I absolutely will say when I'm going to be there. Actually, in all 3 cities that we were in, there were people who came and met me, and I tried to stay in contact with people the best I could about where I was, because I didn't always know where I was going to be and when. But there were 3 people that met up with us in where was it? In Salzburg, and we had dinner. No, that was in Munich, because we met at the Hofbrauhaus and then went over to Hard Rock Cafe, which was the only bad meal I had my entire time in Germany and Austria, was the American chain restaurant. Every other meal I had was fantastic. Best food I've ever had on a trip was on this one. Yeah, the Glockenspiel's Munich. So there's our whole tour group when we all got together. Fantastic group. We had an amazing time. Friends for life, all of those folks now. And we actually have a group chat that we're all part of, and we've still been talking to each other. And a few, few of them ended up with COVID when we got back. Thankfully, I did not. I took 2 tests, and they were both negative. So we stayed at a hotel called the Three Lions. Right, all of our hotels were right near public transportation. So there's, that's our tour group, and there's our opening night dinner that we all had together, and we had folks from the UK, from Czechia, we had one from Norway, we had Canadians, Americans, I might be forgetting something. We had even somebody from Michigan, Kevin. But no, we had a great time. And like I said, we all got along great. You know, when you travel with the same group for an entire week, especially people we've never met before, you never know how it's going to go. But I thought we got along great, and I loved it, and I enjoyed hanging out with everybody. And I'm an introvert, so that was a big deal for me to do that. So that was fantastic. That they had a lot of like apple turnovers and fritters and things like that. And So that's us just kind of hanging out. This is a little bit more kind of exploring Munich. This is a memorial at the site of a synagogue that existed in Munich. How's the beer? I'm not a beer drinker, but I tell you what, the beer I had was called Radler at Hofbrauhaus, was the best beer I've ever had in my life, and I haven't had a lot of beer. It's kind of beer mixed with Sprite is the way they describe it, and it's really good. Was the Michigan Sign Spotter? Take care, Kevin. Glad you stopped by. I'm definitely going to drop all these pictures into the thing for you guys in the next couple of days here. This is the police station in Munich. Fantastic building. And so this was our tour guide. Paul was his name. He was an artist, a very flamboyant guy, but we had a good time with him. And there's more just kind of exploring through Munich. So here is the, if you've seen the famous pictures of the gatherings in Munich around war times and things like that. This is one of those places. So how often do I do these tours? This was the very first one of those tours that I ever did. There will be more. We're doing another one in April in Rome and Florence. And those of you who have been asking, I do have a plan pretty much in place for what we're going to do after the Rome and Florence tour, to go down to Naples and see Pompeii and things like that. I'll be sending that out to everybody in the tour pretty soon. There are 5 spots left on that Italy tour, and then I am going to plan to do a couple more next year. After the video series comes out for this one, if it seems like there's enough demand for it, we might do another one to these sites, to Munich, Salzburg, and Vienna. Once people see it and see what it's all about, I might do that one again. So Egypt, Ralph, is one that I was planning hopefully for next December, and it would have been pretty cheap. An 8-day tour for the whole group. You'd also have to pay for your flights to and from, but everything for the tour itself was going to be about $1,800 a person. But I'm holding off on that while things work themselves out in that part of the world right now. So Chase, thank you. What are some cool jobs, careers for someone who loves history like you? Working in a museum is a big one. Obviously, teaching. There are not a lot of different options for history-related fields. But, yeah, working in a museum, kind of being a curator or researcher. Archaeology is one I'd love to do if I had the time and the ability to do that. Yes, Egypt is a tough place as far as, like, people kind of really coming after tourists, like panhandlers and people wanting to sell and things like that. Jacob, the only tour right now is the Italy one. And if you just do a search for Vlogging Through History Italy, you'll find my video announcing that trip with a link to it. Or just go to trovatrip.com and it'll be there. This is not the beer hall push place. No, this is where the beer hall push kind of came to an end. This is Odeonplatz, I think it is. There's so many different Platz. It's hard to say which one's which. The beer hall push was not. It kind of ended here, but this is not where it started, and this is not where that beer hall was. There's another church that's right there in that same plaza. There's a famous picture, supposedly, of Hitler standing in the crowd at this site when they announced that Germany is at war in 1914, but it was almost certainly doctored, and Hitler was added to the picture. Tibet, I don't know. Tibet's not real high on my list. Unfortunately, Chris did sing, Michael says. John, yes, I'm glad you're going to Italy. Couple of the folks who were on the Munich tour are signed up for Italy now as well. Michael's going, Joe's going. I've not been to Hamburg. Okay, so this was cool because this is actually the silly man with the mustache painted this site, and it was one of the paintings that he submitted when he applied for art school was of this exact site right here, and you can look that up and you can see it. I honestly don't think he was a bad artist when it came to buildings and things like that. He didn't do great with people. But, oh, there it is. There's the painting right there that he did. So you can kind of see. I did a screenshot of it, so that's why it's in my stuff here. Ratskeller is one of the places we ate. I had steak there as well. nice little place. There's my steak. That might have been the best steak I had, and the fries were good too. So this was a little bit more of our tour. And I made a joke when I posted this one about an American, a Czech, and a Brit walking through Munich. This is Václav and Joe, who are both in the chat or have been in the chat. So say hi to those guys. They were great. So right here now is on either side of this is where the Nazi Party had its administrative buildings in Munich during the Third Reich. This was a phenomenal church again. And this, I did have schnitzel. Right at the end, when I was in Vienna, I had some schnitzel. So this is the crypt for the rulers of Bavaria, and that is King Ludwig II, Mad King Ludwig. That is his crypt. And let me tell you, it is intense to know that you're standing like 2 feet away from the body of somebody historic like that. And it went up a notch then when we went to Vienna and we went to the Habsburg crypt and we saw some of those graves. It was incredible. I have not visited Cologne yet either. So yeah, there's Ludwig II. There is Eugene. That is Napoleon Bonaparte's stepson. It's Josephine's son, who is buried there. And that was his tomb. And again, I mean, literally able to reach out and touch within inches of his body is just really quite crazy. It's dark because it was real low light in there. And I'm taking these pictures with my phone. So, do I recommend visiting Germany? Absolutely. I loved Germany. Did not go to the Olympic Village where the 72 massacre happened. Why is he buried there? Because he actually was royalty in Bavaria. I can't remember exactly what his title was, but he died in Munich, and so that's where he's buried. I think also Napoleon's son was initially buried in Vienna, and then in 1940 Hitler had his body moved back to Paris as kind of like a gesture of goodwill to the French. Do most of Europe speak English? The places I've been, yes. The crypt themselves, yeah, I think that was just how they chose to do things. And wait till you see the Habsburg ones. They've got like skulls with crowns on them. It's really creepy, but really cool at the same time. So yeah, there's just some more sites there. There's Ludwig II again. There's a skull on that one. This is Friedrich Michael von Pfalz-Zweibrücken. Zweibrücken, I guess it is. Those are just some more sites inside that church that the crypt is under. All right, so here's our first of our palaces that we visited. I think this is Schönbrunn Palace. I'm trying to keep them all straight in my head because there were so many of them. No, I wasn't talking about Hitler's body. I was talking about Hitler having Napoleon's son's body moved. Mr. Beep, what's going on? Do I think Europe's much different to the U.S.? It's less different than people realize. There are significant differences, but not all that different as you might think, really. Nymphenburg. Thank you, Václav. That's Nymphenburg Palace. Schönbrunn's in Vienna. All right. So Nymphenburg Palace, this is a huge complex. It was beautiful. It was amazing. A lot of these castles and palaces you weren't allowed to take video in, so you're not going to see a ton of those in my videos. But I'll at least give some of the history of some of these places. And like I said, it was huge, and the Duke of Bavaria still lives there at that palace in Nymphenburg to this day. And get this, if you are a subscriber to the Jacobite claim to the British throne, the current Jacobite claimant to the British throne is the Duke of Bavaria. So I did not go to the zoo, but I think some of our people did. Biggest culture shock? For me at this point, there isn't one. Because I've been there a few times. Really no significant culture shocks for me. because I don't go to these places without first having studied a lot of where I'm going and learning about it. I watch a lot of videos like Walter's World talking about the do's and don'ts of these different places. So I have a pretty decent grasp of what I'm going into when I get there. So I don't think there's been any culture shocks for me. I think the biggest adjustment for me, as somebody who's not necessarily a real healthy eater, is that food is much healthier over there. And that's a good thing. That's why you don't see nearly as many fat people in Europe as you see in America. Just the content of the food, the additives, the sugars, the bad stuff is a lot less. And so there's a difference. Like if you go to a fast food place over there, it's not going to taste. Don't expect chicken nuggets in Europe to taste like they do in the U.S. Don't expect KFC to taste the same. Though honestly, if you're going to Europe, you shouldn't be eating those places anyway. So the no tipping, no. Honestly, and actually I did tip some of the times anyway. I visited where most of the British monarchs are buried. I've been to Westminster Abbey and to the Chapel of St. George at Windsor Castle, which is where most of the British monarchs of the last 700-800 years are buried. So have been to Salzburg, yep. So there's a view of the gardens. The gardens are just crazy at these places. I did get to take some pictures in Nymphenburg Palace, and I was able to do some video in there. Although you only get to see like small portions of these palaces. Battle of Austerlitz commemoration there. Some pictures of the ducks. I thought this was cool. Exotic Fanta. I didn't taste it. Have not been to Spain yet. Have not been to Tyrol. I have not gone to Versailles yet. Versailles was far enough outside of Paris that in the limited time I had in Paris, we just didn't have time to set aside most of the day to go to Versailles. I'll get there at some point. There's Hofbrauhaus. Super loud there. Haven't been to Leipzig yet, Pippin. And there's not much to see there anyway because the city has kind of grown over the battlefield. So there's a big memorial there now to the Battle of the Nations. But there's not really a battlefield to see. Please never go to Michigan, Ralph says. Hofbrauhaus, I had a drink. It was very loud. It was very much like what you picture in your mind of Bavarian culture to be. So we experienced it just to experience it, but honestly didn't spend a ton of time there. There's my friend Marcel, who I'm going to be seeing again next week when we're in France. Just some shots of Hofbrauhaus. Yes, I did finish it, although it wasn't a high alcohol content drink. Georgie Porgy, thank you. Appreciate that. I have been to South Carolina. Jacob, I have been to every state but Utah and Rhode Island. The weather was great. It got a little chilly and rainy in Austria, but the weather in Munich was almost too warm. It was like low 70s. It was kind of humid. I would have been okay with it being 10 or 15 degrees colder than it was. So here's some more views that we got of walking around Munich. So this was our bus then that we took to the Neuschwanstein Castle and I'm trying to remember the name. Hohenschwangau, is that what it was? Those were amazing places. They were Neuschwanstein was built by Ludwig II and never finished it. So that was cool. We had our little Mercedes van. Hohenschwangau, thank you. So these are some of the views as we went into the Alps, which was breathtakingly beautiful. I got a lot of video of that. This is all us making the drive down to the castles. And there you get your first glimpse of Neuschwanstein in the distance there. We did go to the Eagle's Nest. You'll see that here soon. It was accessible. They usually close around November 1st. Weather permitting, they're open until then. And then there's the Hohenschwangau there. Really cool stuff. We hiked up to the top, got some great views along the way. Here's some views from up there. There's Joe drinking Coke while I drank my Pepsi. And yes, that is one of the models for the Cinderella's castle. But so beautiful. Absolutely worth taking a day trip there if you're ever in Munich. Have not been to Liechtenstein yet. Have not been to Switzerland yet either. This was a bridge that we went out on and got some amazing views there as well. But again, Neuschwanstein, you can't take any video or pictures on the inside, but boy, I wish you could, because it is incredible. The detail and the work that went into that place is just amazing. Could not recommend that enough as a place to visit if you ever get a chance. Best country to visit in Europe. Listen, my experience is so limited that I couldn't possibly do it justice to say one way or another. But there's been something about every country that I've visited that I've loved. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's true. Didn't really visit any battle sites on this particular trip. A group trip in the U.S., Cameron, yes. I'm actually working on that right now, and hopefully in the next week or two, something will be announced. I'm in the process of putting together the budget and the itinerary of what will probably be a 3-day guided tour of the Vicksburg campaign sites. So Vicksburg, some stuff in Louisiana, places like Port Gibson, Raymond, Jackson, Champion Hill, Vicksburg. Probably be 3 days. Basically, when I get the budget put together for that and put it out, you'll be covering the costs of your hotel and any admission costs for museums and things like that. And that'll be it. So it'll be up to you to get there, and you'll just kind of handle your own food and stuff like that. So not real expensive. So I'm working on that. And I think that'll be in March. I have tried Iron Brew. I did not like it, and I love everything Scottish. I didn't like Iron Brew. It tasted like bubblegum pop to me. So, yeah, so really cool. This was a cool little site, and I thought I had a fantastic place to sit, and then the sun came up from behind the castle and got right in my face. But the food, again, was fantastic. I had spaghetti bolognese. This was a Hofbrauhaus at the site there of the castle. And now here's looking over out the windows of Hohenschwangau. So this right here, this is Andrew. And Andrew's from California. And Andrew had never left the United States in his whole life. Had only left California once to go to Pennsylvania, I think he said. This was like his second time ever leaving California. And he went on this tour. And he did great with it. He adjusted well. And I think he went to London after that. So Fort Sumter. I want to get to Charleston. Because there's a lot I want to see down in Charleston for sure. So I'm going to try to do that at some point. There's Jonathan sleeping on the way back. The bird is on his head. Oh, yeah, he bought this fake bird. It's sitting on his head there, and he wore that thing around everywhere he went. So this is all some of us gathering. There's Sammy right there, who's from the Netherlands. No, he's Belgian. He's from Belgium. And he was our tour, our trip kind of overseer, right? He was kind of a tour guide at some places, but he was great. He kind of took care of everything for us, made sure it was all good wherever we went. This is on the train now going from Munich to Salzburg. And here is Hohensalzburg, which was really, really cool too. Sammy 2 was from the Netherlands. Sammy 2, we called him, was the History Guys group leader. Favorite hymn, It Is Well With My Soul. Favorite Christmas song, Oh Holy Night. We did visit the Habsburg Treasury, as you will see in these photos. So here's the Salzburg Hauptbahnhof, which is a train station. That's when we arrived there. Then we took a bus, which they loved us when 22 people all got on a bus at once, to go in, and we arrived there safely in Salzburg. This was our lunch in Salzburg after we got there. I had a salad And JD, if you're still here, I did not eat any of the green stuff. I just got it because I wanted the beef, and it was the best thing they had on the menu to get some beef. Joe, you guys will hear about this when this part of the video comes up, but we had a couple of different nights where we went out late and we did a little bit of like pub hopping and stuff like that, just to kind of hang out and have something to do. And it wasn't like we weren't all getting drunk or anything like that, but there were people who were, and we were walking through Salzburg coming back to our hotel, and this guy was retching into one of the drains in the middle of the street. And when I say retching, I mean like it was like he was trying to be loud and obnoxious with how badly he was going over and over again, to the point where other people who were walking past him started imitating it. It was crazy. So all I did was eat the beef. But it was good food. There's Mozart. Mozart is all over Salzburg. He was born in Salzburg. So we did see the house where he was born, which you'll see here in just a minute. One of the little churches there. Hohensalzburg was amazing. Here's this is a canal of the river there that goes through. There is the house that Mozart was born in, right there. Aston Villa won 4-1. And yeah, a lot of artists there. Really, really cool. I think we did a group picture in front of that fountain. Yeah, there we go. Sazak River, okay. Mozart. I'd take Mozart over Tchaikovsky. So that's our whole group there. And we got a group picture. Hohensalzburg, highly worth your time. Definitely check it out. Amazing views, amazing history in there. And I'm just kind of flying through some of these pictures because I want to get to some other stuff. So this is Cannon. Cannon was one of the people on our tour. And that is Cannon standing next to a cannon, holding a cannon. And we planned that. We were waiting for the first cannon we saw so we could take that picture. The castle from the Last Crusade is... Oh, I looked it up while we were there. It's nowhere near any of the places we were. But I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. I'm sure somebody will look it up. But they had a lot of military stuff on display, stuff even up to World War I, but going back to, like you see, armor and things like that as well. This is some of the old parts of the castle that have been excavated that you can see there. Yes, I have seen the movie Amazing Grace. One of Benedict Cumberbatch's first big roles that he had. He played William Pitt the Younger. Dune Castle, that's it. So again, great views that we got to see from Hohensalzburg. And it's kind of a blurry picture there, but there's JD, there's Marcel, there's Eric Dorr, Matt Leach from Band of Brothers, and our friend Rob from History in Your Hand. They were there for the Band of Brothers, the We Happy Few tour, the very first We Happy Few tour ever that I've missed because I had my own tour to do. But we did get a chance to catch up when we were in Salzburg. So there's an Austrian flag. We didn't see a lot of those, actually. This bar was called the Whiskey Museum, but all it was just a bar that you could go and get a bunch of whiskey, and it was really, really crowded when we were there. So it was tough. And then we went and found another little bar that was a little nicer in terms of the space we had. And they played some foosball and things like that while we were there. It was a great group for sure, Rob. And then this is us in the streets, and it was right around this time that we saw the guy that was hurling. There's Kevin right there. He was in the chat a little while ago. And then this was our tour guide for going up to the Eagle's Nest and to the Berghof, Hitler's home. And there's the Eagle's Nest right there. A lot of windy roads up into the mountains to get there. What surprised me the most about Austria after visiting, I didn't realize, and actually that was one of there were some things that our tour guides, like this guy in particular, at Eagle's Nest, said that I'm not sure I agreed with in terms of his interpretations and his own opinions on some things. But one of the things he talked a lot about, which is absolutely true, is that Bavaria and Austria, unlike northern Germany, Bavaria and Austria are very much a Celtic culture, and they were heavily Celtic during the Roman times, and that carried over into the modern era. And so that's why there's a big divide between southern Germany and Austria and northern Germans, and that they're very heavily influenced by that. And I didn't realize until I started hearing that and started looking into it myself how much similarity there was between Bavarian and Austrian culture and, say, Irish and Scottish culture, which was really, really neat to kind of think about. I've not been to Castle Itter, would love to go there, but I believe it's privately owned. Black Forest is further north. All right, so there's the tunnel that you go down to get to the gold-plated elevator that you take up to the Eagle's Nest. There was a lot of people there when we were there. And then this is behind the Eagle's Nest, looking up to that little higher area there where you see a lot of the pictures taken from. What is my opinion about what Dark Viper said? I don't really have one. He can say whatever he wants. I disagree. He's wrong about his opinion about what fair use is, and he's entitled to have his wrong opinion, but I don't really spend a lot of time worrying about people who make it their business to just go trashing other people on YouTube. I got better things to do with my time. So Dark Viper can do what he wants and say what he wants, and I'm free to ignore it. There may be some tours, Stephen. I'm not entirely sure if there are or not. It's possible. I just don't know one way or the other. Yeah, there's a lot of history that you can read about up there. There's that ugly fireplace that Mussolini donated to Hitler, or gave to Hitler as a gift. Where do I announce visits to battlefields and historic sites? Right here on the channel. I usually post videos saying where I'm going to be and if there's any meetup opportunities at those places. But yeah, the views are amazing. And actually in this view right here, you can actually see, so this horseshoe-shaped hotel, my understanding is, if you've ever seen Band of Brothers, and you know that scene where they take Berchtesgaden and they go into Hermann Goering's house that has all of the wine in the basement, the 10,000 bottles or whatever it was. I believe his house was right about there, and maybe JD or somebody in the chat can confirm that for me, but I believe that was what our tour guide told us, was Goering's house was right about in that spot. And then the, Hitler's Berghof was kind of down in this area right here. And the view that he had then was facing that direction, away from the Eagle's Nest. The Eagle's Nest was not like a home that was lived in. It was the place that you took people to wow them. It all had a purpose, the gold-plated elevator, the little temple that you waited in before you went into the gold-plated elevator, and the views that you had from the top. It was meant to go up there for a few hours, not to go up there and stay. The regime had their homes down in Berchtesgaden. And yeah, like any of these places, like if you've ever been to a place like the Alps or Northern California, like around Lake Tahoe or Alaska or the Grand Canyon, pictures do not in any way, shape, or form do justice to the incredibly beautiful views that you see. You can't even get the slightest sense of that in these pictures. I wish you could, but you can't. Yes, Elin Technology, I'm aware of the thing with Limino as well. The incredible views. There's me in front of the Eagle's Nest. And I think I did another picture a little kind of higher up. There you go. It was a little chilly. It was snowing a little bit, but it wasn't bad. At least it was clear. So that's the main thing, is that it was clear. I did not take my drone up there. I actually didn't end up using my drone at all on that trip. The weather was just not great that day, and so I just didn't want to mess with dealing with the drone. So this picture here is one that people often say was taken at the Eagle's Nest. It wasn't. These are guys, that you might be familiar with from Band of Brothers. This was taken at Hitler's Berghof. And you'll see the view here in just a second. It's basically this. No, is that the view? Yeah, that's the view. It's basically this view here. Not exactly the same spot, but roughly that spot. And so a couple of guys here. There's Harry Welsh, if you're familiar with Band of Brothers. There's Dick Winters right there. That's Nixon. And then right over here, if you remember in the scene from Band of Brothers from when they were in the Netherlands, you have the guy from the Dutch resistance that tells them, like, introduces them to a kid and is kind of walking them through the city, Eindhoven, I think it was. That's him right there. He actually stayed with Easy Company for the rest of the war. And actually got a uniform and everything, was attached to the 101st Airborne Division. I forget his name off the top of my head, but that's him right there in the picture. Too much attention for Hitler and his gang? Well, unfortunately, the reality is the places we went have a lot of history associated with those folks. So, this is roughly where those guys were sitting in that picture. Is in that spot there. So this is what remains of the Berghof, which was destroyed in the early 1950s, what was left of it. There's Joe and Václav. Stephen, that's why the buildings aren't there anymore. The only building that's still there from all of that is the Eagle's Nest. All the rest of them have been destroyed. There is a hotel right around the corner. All right, I think it's a hotel. There's a building just, if you're looking at this picture, it would be just to the back right from there. It was a building that was used to house SS guards. That is still there, but none of the homes of any of those people are still there. Lamino just got 5 million subs. That's awesome. Good for him. He definitely puts a lot of work and does a fantastic job with his videos. All right, so that's just us in a little American bar where we went to watch a little NFL on Sunday night when we were in Salzburg. And now this is us walking to the bus station again because we are headed to Vienna. Professor What? 100% agree with you. I disagree with Lamino on reaction stuff too. Although he's got a great point, because I'm really irritated by the people who do reactions like on Twitch where they just let the video play and like they go and eat and go to the bathroom. If you're not going to add something significant and transformative to it, I think you do a disservice to those of us who do. So I have no problem with anybody who doesn't like reaction content. That is totally their opinion, and I wholeheartedly understand why people have that opinion. And like I've said before, if someone expresses that they don't want me doing reactions to their content, I won't do reactions to their content. By law, I'm not required to have their permission, but just as a matter of personal policy, I'm not going to do that. I did not get to watch the Browns win. I couldn't pull it up. I have Hulu, but even with a VPN, I couldn't fool Hulu into letting me watch it. So I just followed it on ESPN, followed it on the app. I thought this was kind of crazy. Sour mushrooms candy. And I thought that was weird until I thought, well, we have sour gummy worms. So is there a lot of difference between one creepy thing and another? Trenton, thank you for that. Better series, Band of Brothers of the Pacific. Band of Brothers. And I say that with all due respect to my friend Scott Gibson, who I know is a fan of the channel, who acted in the Pacific, but Band of Brothers. But I have high hopes for Masters of the Air. I'm pretty excited to see that when it comes out in January. Does Austrian and German sound different? Yes. Though not tremendously different from Bavarian German. They're both very different than Northern German, for sure. But Bavaria is probably closer in terms of language and culture to Austria than it is to Northern Germany. Hey, now, we're 4-2 so far, Ralph. So you're a mortarman in the Marine Corps. That was my cousin was a mortarman in the Marine Corps as well. And Sledge's daughter-in-law is a big fan of the channel. I'm friends with her on Facebook, and she's always commenting on stuff, especially on Facebook and on Instagram. All right, what was this I was just looking at? Oh, yeah, there's the mushrooms again. So this is us on our train, headed to... I always take pictures of people when they're sleeping because they did it to me, too, on the trip. There was my snack, one of my snacks I picked up. This is the train station in Vienna, and then this is our hotel in Vienna. And now we're walking around Vienna here and taking a little tour. Vienna was probably my favorite city of the three. I loved Vienna. Vienna is probably one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. I want to get back there and see a whole lot more. Vienna was fantastic. And this church, St. Stephen's Cathedral, was just ridiculously beautiful. So, yeah, there's some scenes in Vienna. These are some Roman ruins that were uncovered, though not in that exact spot. This is just where they're on display. Snapshot, I'm with you. I'd love to see Lamino do something on Lincoln and the whole Lincoln conspiracy and all of that. That would be fantastic. Benjamin, you think Vienna was the best as well? Very cool. Benjamin was also on the tour. You've seen him in some of the pictures. I agree the Browns did Baker Mayfield dirty. Other places I want to visit. Oh, there's so many. Would love to go to Poland. I'm looking forward to going to Italy in April. Did not go to the Roman Museum in Vienna. No. Prague, I'm definitely going to get to Prague at some point, maybe even next year. So now this is inside the Imperial Treasury, which is one of the most ridiculous collections of historical artifacts you'll ever see in your life. And there's 2 museums in Vienna that are ridiculous in terms of the quality of their stuff that they have. But Budapest is another place I want to go to. But the Imperial Treasury in Vienna, just ridiculous. There's Napoleon. Just the stuff that you see in here. But there's a couple in particular that are really things I want to highlight here. This is the cradle that Napoleon's son was kept in. His son, Napoleon II, the son that he had with the Austrian princess. Yes, Drew, I just showed a bunch of pictures from Salzburg. But wait till you see, I mean, and all this stuff's amazing. This is an agate bowl from Constantinople from the 4th century, which is just nuts that it's in one shape, or one piece. Every one of these pieces is amazing, but there's very little that tops that right there. That is the 1,000-year-old crown of the Holy Roman Empire. There are copies of that in places like Aachen, but that is the original. That is one of the most priceless historical artifacts in the world, and I was inches away from it, and so was everybody else on our tour. Oh my gosh, I mean, chills even now just thinking about being in the room with that crown. Oh my gosh, it was so cool. And we had to rush to get there because that museum's closed on Tuesdays, and we got there Monday afternoon, and we only had Monday afternoon and Tuesday in Vienna. Speaking of Charlemagne, so yeah, that's the imperial crown, dated to sometime between 960 and 980, the original part of the crown. That is not the one Charlemagne had. So JD, I thought so, but I'm told that the one that World War II soldier is wearing is one of the copies that was made, and not the original one that was in Vienna. But it's a copy of that same crown. Like for example, Kaiser Wilhelm II had a copy made to be placed in Aachen where Charlemagne is buried. So I can't confirm that, but but I was told when I told somebody it was the same one that soldier was wearing, somebody corrected me and said it was one of the copies. So I'd have to look that up. Believe it or not, not a lot of like protective stuff. I'm sure there are sensors you can see there. So like a lot of such relics, there's zero way to substantiate these claims, right? But this is said to be a piece of the true cross, right? But there are a lot of such relics that a lot of people had, and there's no way to confirm it. And honestly, you go back more than 1,000 years and nobody has any idea where this thing came from. So there's no way that you could possibly prove that. But that's what it claims to be. Along with the spear of Longinus, the spear of destiny, as it's sometimes known, which goes back, we know for sure, back to 750 to 800. So it's at least 1,200 years old. It's Carolingian and origin that we know of, but beyond that, there's no way to know for sure. There's the holy hand grenade, as I jokingly referred to it. But I mentioned how there's a selfie with the crown. So there's Charlemagne there. You see the stuff he's holding, right? I guess I didn't get a good picture of it. I got video of it. This stuff you see right here with Václav's reflection, this stuff was removed from the coffin of Charlemagne. Yeah, you're going to see the Habsburg crypt in a few minutes. They exhumed Charlemagne around the year 1000, and this stuff was in the coffin with him. This stuff was buried with Charlemagne, which that was really, really cool too when we saw that. Just crazy history. All right, so here we go. So these are some sites now of the Hofburg Palace, which is where the emperors lived, the Habsburgs. This is the Habsburg crypt. This is where something like 12 emperors and 22 queens and empresses and a bunch of other members of the Habsburg dynasty are buried. In fact, the most recent grave we saw there was a month old, and it was a granddaughter of the last Austro-Hungarian emperor. Yeah, you'll see some of them in here. So there's Kaiser Matthias, who died in 1619 in there. Yeah, the hearts and the the viscera are buried in another place. So the tombs are so elaborate on these. Every one of them were just so elaborate. That museum was the Imperial Treasury, which is at Hofburg Palace in Vienna. The Habsburgs, yeah, they absolutely still exist. They're still a family. And just the elaborate nature of these tombs is just so cool. And every one of these is the grave of an insanely famous person who was consequential in history. I really liked that particular skull and crown there. Yeah, actually, the guy who would be heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne is a race car driver. Now, they get a little simpler here with some of these. That is, I'm trying to remember who that one was. That was somebody really famous. And I can't remember off the top of my head who it was now. I got it in the video, so you'll see it. So this is Maria Theresa, who has the most elaborate of all of the tombs in the Habsburg crypt. That was Joseph II? Okay. The current heir is, he's like 90 years old, I think. His name Otto, I think, is Otto. Yeah, Elon, unfortunately, that's the reality with the podcast. And when I do research for future original content, like I did with my 1776 video, those will be turned into podcasts. So there will be more podcasts coming. I'm just not going out of my way to intentionally make podcast episodes because it takes a lot of work to do those independent of YouTube videos for the return that's involved. Dan the Man Legend, hello, how you doing? So there's Kaiser Maximilian. So if you're familiar with the Emperor Maximilian, who briefly served as Emperor of Mexico before he was executed in Mexico, that's his grave there. And after Maria Theresa, they got very simple. They stopped doing the real elaborate stuff all over the tombs, and that's why you see them get a lot simpler. Maximilian was the brother of Franz Joseph, who was the emperor during the First World War when it started. So there will be more podcast episodes. Exploring with Jason, I'm doing great. How about yourself? There's Crown Prince Rudolph. He's buried right next to his father. He took his own life in a murder-suicide. He was unhappy in his relationship and had a woman he wanted to marry and he couldn't. And so they did kind of a murder-suicide thing. And he's the reason, upon his death, that Franz Ferdinand became the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Because Franz Joseph had no other surviving children. Maxime, thank you for that. I've ignited in you a big interest in the American Civil War and knowledge of history has grown a lot. Awesome. I appreciate that. That means the world to me to hear that. And if you do start a YouTube channel, let me know. I'd love to check it out. Morganatic marriage. So let's talk a little bit more. So this is Elizabeth Cici, she was known as. She's the wife of Franz Joseph. She was assassinated. She was stabbed. And she wasn't even the target. The guy he was an anarchist who killed her in 1898. I think it was I want to say it was in Zurich, Switzerland is where that happened. But he was there actually looking for somebody else. Another member of royalty, and when he missed the chance to kill that guy, he settled on Cici as his backup target. He stabbed her. And so not only did Franz Joseph lose his wife to assassination, he also lost his only son to murder-suicide. Geneva, Switzerland. Thank you. Appreciate that. He was Italian, the guy. Exploring with Jason, you're just down the road from me in Summit County. I live in Mahoning County. So there's Franz Joseph. He was emperor from 1848 when his father, I think it was his father, abdicated in 1848 during that year of all those revolutions. And then was on the throne all the way till 1916 when he died. So that was pretty epic to see that as well. How historically accurate is Amazing Grace? Like any movie, there's some liberties taken, but it gets the main parts of the story correct. So then here she is. This is Yolande, who is the granddaughter of Karl, the last emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is his granddaughter, and she had only died a few weeks before we visited the crypt, and she had just been placed in there. So it was a good reminder that this is a family that still exists and that are still using this family crypt. So that was pretty cool. There's a lot of historic figures that had tragic lives. It's hard to kind of just pick one. Was her son? Her son was the one on the other side. Yeah, that committed suicide. So it was Franz Joseph in the middle, and then Cici on one side of him, and their son on the other side. I don't know of any good books on the Habsburgs. I haven't actually read any. Right now I'm doing a 31-hour audiobook on Napoleon, and I am learning a ton. I am going to be well prepared when the movie comes out to be able to really give you a good breakdown of that, because I know 3 times as much about Napoleon as I did a week ago, and I'm going to learn a whole lot more still. Otto von Habsburg, I think, is he the one still alive, or is that Karl? Okay, so here's us looking around. There's another steak that I had. That one was okay. It wasn't as good as some of the others. We went to see an orchestra. They did Mozart and some other music as well, and that was really cool. Kevin, who was in the chat earlier, was the one that kind of set that up and ordered the tickets for us. The book is called Napoleon, and this guy had access. Napoleon has like 30,000 letters that he wrote that are still in existence. And so he based a lot of his book on the letters. It's called Napoleon: A Life by Andrew Roberts. He had I wouldn't say he had an affair with the later Swedish queen. He was engaged to the future queen of Sweden. They broke it off. She married Marshal Bernadotte and then became the queen of Sweden. But she was his fiancée before they broke up, and he ended up marrying Josephine. So this is the place where we got to see the orchestra. That was a lot of fun. It was nice to see a little bit of culture there, and I really enjoyed that. One of the few times I took off my hat for a picture, and they were all dressed in period clothing. And this woman that sang, this woman here was phenomenal. This guy was good, but he didn't project over the orchestra the way she did. She was so good. I haven't seen any of the tombs of the Holy Roman Emperors except for the ones that were in the Habsburg tomb. Yes, there are recordings of Franz Joseph's voice. I have heard those. All right, so here is... so that's got to be Schönbrunn Palace. Yeah, I think that's Schönbrunn Palace here. And that was cool too. Amazing gardens behind it. I don't know that I was as impressed with that one as I was with Nymphenburg. I've not been to Istanbul, but Hagia Sophia is high on my list of places I would love to see, for sure. There's my schnitzel. I did have schnitzel. I think that was on the last day in Vienna. Schnitzel is just breaded meat. Chicken in this case, but a lot of times it's different kinds of beef. All right, good night, Tante. We're not going to go too much longer with this. I've got a lot to get done myself. We are going to do more streams in the near future. So this museum was amazing. And I know I'm running out of superlatives to use. We went to Hofburg. We went to the Imperial Treasury. I showed that a little while ago. Didn't tour the palace itself. Didn't have time. But this museum, the military museum in Vienna, holy cow, wait till you see what's in this place. Yeah, Sarajevo room is right. One of the most incredible pieces of history I've ever been in the same room with. And when I say that, I say that recognizing I've been in some pretty cool places, even on this trip. So these are some of the standards. They have a whole room in this museum dedicated to, when we talk about the winged hussars in 1683 and the siege of Vienna, the Battle of Vienna, as it's called, in September of 1683. They got a whole room full of stuff they captured from the Muslim army during that battle. Oh my gosh, it was so intense to see that stuff. And there it is. I didn't take many pictures. You'll see a lot more in the video. There's a whole room, a massive room for the Napoleonic Wars. They've got collections of some of the marshals, some of the generals, like Archduke Charles, who was one of the generals for the Austrians. But right there, it's the arsenal, yeah. That is the car in which Franz Ferdinand and Sophie were assassinated in Sarajevo. That is the car. And there is a bullet hole right there. The bullet that killed Sophie caused that hole. Guess who triggered the alarm there, Vaslav? Yeah, they've got proximity alarms. You can see one of them down there. If you get too close, and that was like the only room where there was actually a security guard standing there. Because when you're talking about this kind of history. But yeah, there it is. And I had to get a picture there. And I never feel right smiling in front of a piece of history like that, right? I didn't see any blood in the car, but it's possible it could have been down in, or maybe it was cleaned. But you can see, there you go. There you can see the bullet hole really well. There's the uniform he was wearing, and you can see the blood stains there. It's dried, and so it's obviously light. But yeah, I have few times in my life, the crown that you saw from the day before is up there as well. Few times in my life have I gotten chills being in the presence of a historical artifact like that. Oh my gosh. I would never venture to the Titanic if offered the opportunity. Not interested. I'll look at other people's videos and be perfectly happy. Right there's the bullet hole. It doesn't look like much, but that is the bullet hole that was caused by the bullet that killed him. Right there. And what's cool about how they have this presented is that's the couch he died on. So they have the uniform laying right above the couch that he died on. So it's presented in a pretty interesting way. Yeah, I think it was like a 22. It wasn't a big bullet, but it got him in just the right spot. Did not visit Franz Ferdinand's grave. He's buried in a different part of Austria, so I wasn't able to go there. This was cool. This was in the World War I room. And again, I didn't take a lot of pictures because I was doing a lot of video. So you guys are going to see a lot of that museum in the video. There'll probably be a whole video just about that museum. Incredible history. I mean, amazing stuff. This is just a collection of a bunch of cannons, and a lot of these go back 400 or 500 years. And this church might have been the most beautiful of all of them that we saw. And again, I didn't take a lot of pictures, but I did do a lot of video in there. This was our last dinner that we had the last night, and it was fantastic dinner. It was like a buffet thing, so they kept bringing food out, and then we would just pass the plates around, and it was all really good. So if you do ever get the chance, I am going to be doing more of these tours now that we did one. We had a couple hiccups right at the beginning of the tour, but stuff that was kind of out of the control. It was more the fault of the hotel we stayed in. Once that was ironed out, the day we all arrived, everything went great. And I was very happy with how it all went. I had amazing time with all the people. Would tour with any of them again in a heartbeat. And I'm going to tour with some of them again. Václav and Michael and Joe are all going on the tour to Italy as well. We got 5 spots left for that. And like I said, once I start putting these videos up, if there seems to be interest in these sites, I may book another tour to do this exact same tour that we did and take a new group, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of interest in going to these sites. And now, having been there, I have a little better idea of what to expect, and I can prepare a little more for it and make it an even better experience for everybody. But it was great. So what countries have I visited? I'll go over all of that for you in just a minute. There's the other half of our group there. Yeah, and so there's Christian there. He's from Norway. There's Bobby. He's from the UK. And Cannon, we already talked about him. We are going to the Vatican when we go to Italy. On the tour in Italy, we're going to Rome, the Vatican. We're going to Florence. And then we're going to stay a couple of extra days and go to Naples, Pompeii. Trying to figure something out to go to Monte Cassino. I'm trying to work it out. It's not an easy place to get to. So yeah, and then we went out that night. Strongbow apple cider is amazing. I had it for the first time, and I took a picture of it so I wouldn't forget how really good it was. And I had to take a picture of Smarties because this came up in one of my videos, the difference between European Smarties, which are like an M&M's type of candy, and Smarties here in the States were a completely different kind of thing. Monte Cassino is just hard to get to because it's a difficult place to get to geographically. I don't mean it's hard to get to, like get access to. I mean, it's not easy to just go visit. Like you have to book travel, and it takes the better part of a day just to go there and back. So I'm trying to figure it all out. We are going to St. Peter's on that. If you go to the link for the tour, and maybe I'll get the tour link and post it here for you. It has the whole itinerary of all the places we're going to go to. All right, and there's a picture. This is flying into Amsterdam on my way home. Love Amsterdam, been there before, and I think that's it. So obviously then, of course, there's a lot of video as well that I took that you guys will get to see. I have over 1,000 video clips that I shot during that tour, so a lot there. So let me go ahead and see if I can pull up the tour for you here, and I'll actually show it to you guys where all we're going, and then I'll post the link for anybody who might be interested. It's not cheap. Trova Trips tours are not necessarily inexpensive, and it doesn't include your airfare if you have to fly to get there. So I realize it's not for everybody, but that's why we're trying to do some stuff here in the States. And I am trying to figure out something that I can book for a Western Front World War I tour at some point. So there's the link to the tour, and then I'll show it to you guys here. I'll drag it over in just a second. All right, here we go. Okay, so it's a shorter tour. First night we just have our welcome dinner, but most of us will be arriving early enough in the day on the 10th. I'm actually going to arrive on the 9th, the day before. So like we did with our Munich trip, a lot of people came in a day early, and we spent that extra day together. Because the tour, 2 months before the tour starts, we all get added to a group chat in the app Telegram, and so we get to know each other. We did a Zoom call with each other about 2 weeks before the trip, where we all got to meet face to face and talk. And so we were talking for weeks before the tour, talking about, okay, here's some sites I'd like to get to, because the tours are a nice mix of scheduled group events together and also free time for you to explore and do whatever you want. And during those free times, there were groups of us that kind of stayed together. So I never did anything really by myself. So I'm sure some of us will be doing some stuff on the 10th when we arrive, before the tour really officially starts. But then that first day in Rome, we're going to go to the Colosseum. And where our hotel is going to be actually really convenient and close to all of those places. And I'll do some more Q&A here in just a minute. That is the 20th Ohio Monument at Vicksburg. That is my background, because I had an ancestor in the 20th Ohio. Colosseum, Palatine Hill, Roman Forum, Spanish Steps, Trevi Fountain, the Pantheon, and then of course we'll probably have some free time in there as well. The next day we are going to Vatican City, Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's, and then that late afternoon, early evening, we're taking a train to Florence. And then Florence, we'll have a Tuscan farm tour that we're going to do in the morning. We get to taste their wines paired with their olives, cheese, and homemade bread. And then we have lunch, and then we'll have some time to kind of explore Florence on our own. The next day, it starts out with a walking tour of Florence, and then we'll have the day to do whatever we want in Florence before we take the train back to Rome that night. And then we have our farewell dinner in Rome. And then that next day, day 6, the official tour ends, but anybody who wants to is going to go with us. And like I said, we're going to do Pompeii one day, and then a World War II battlefield, probably, if I can make it happen and get the information, and I should know in the next week or so, we're going to do Monte Cassino. It's what I'd like to do, but if we can't, we'll probably do Anzio, which is closer to Rome. So that's that tour. I am working on doing some others with them. I'd like to do something in London. There's a possibility of doing one that is, like I said, Budapest, Bratislava, and Prague, which I'd very much like to do. I have now been to 3 of the 5 largest castles in Europe: Edinburgh Castle, Hohensalzburg, and Windsor Castle. The largest inhabited castle in Europe is in Prague, and that's one of the 5 largest. I think the largest is actually in Poland. So that'd give me the 4th of the 5 largest castles in Europe if I go to Prague. When I open mail on camera again, I'm going to try to do that before I go to France next week. But if I don't, it'll definitely be after that, because then I'll be home for like 3 months. I'm not traveling again until February. So, yeah, so that's that. Let me catch up on a couple of last minute chat things here, and then we're going to wrap this up. Andrew, there's Andrew. I was just talking about you a little bit ago. I'm glad you survived your first trip overseas, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed having you. So John, you're flying to Venice the Sunday before. You know, I haven't booked my flights yet for that. I actually may fly to Venice myself, because the flights to Venice are way cheaper than the flights to Rome. So I was looking at that possibility. But the problem is I don't want to travel too early, because on April 8th, which as it stands is already the day I'm leaving. There's a total solar eclipse that's coming right through Northeast Ohio where I live that I don't want to miss. Yeah, so I might fly home from Venice, but I'm probably not going to fly in any sooner. So we'll see. Am I Mr. Beat? No, I am not Mr. Beat, but I am friends with Mr. Beat. He was a consul of Rome! I could do the trips myself, but I don't have the know-how or the resources to do it the way that they do. I am doing that with the one I'm working on for Vicksburg. That is going to be something I do myself, because that's a lot easier to bite off and chew than something like taking a group of 24 people to Europe. The cutoff, I believe, is 3 months out, so it's in January. I'm pretty sure is the cutoff for booking Italy. Right now, if you book it, you only have to put 25% down, I think. But I think once we get 3 months in, you have to be fully paid. I had a million pictures on my phone, but I download them all to hard drives so that I don't have them all in there. Mausoleum of Augustus is definitely something I want to see while we're in Rome for sure. So Chris needs someone to carry the bags. I'm willing to work to pay for the trip. I actually, as I mentioned earlier, I want to do Egypt because that same tour company has one for Egypt, and they hit all the big sites in Egypt. But right now, with the way things are in the Middle East, I'm holding off on announcing that. I was going to announce it when I got back from Germany and Austria. But I offered to my friend Sander from Sander VK History that I would provide him a free spot on the tour to Egypt in exchange for some animation for my videos and for some editing services. Roman Forum, yeah, is on the list of things. There's a sleeper from Vienna to Rome. Nice, Vaslav. Very cool. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up right here, guys. Thank you so much for joining the first stream that I've done in a while. I'm actually almost done editing the first episode from the tour, so you'll probably see that soon, and I'll have a lot of time on my hands to get some editing done soon. So I'm going to try to get an episode or two up every week for that tour, so you'll be seeing that stuff coming up very soon. Yeah, Tour of Battle Sites, American Civil War should be announced very, very soon. Colosseum's on that list too. I'll put the link one more time to the tour if you guys want to check out the itinerary and all the information about that. So there it is. Thank you guys. See you again real soon.